Hola y bienvenidos. Welcome to Cafecito con les Directores, Insights at Work, Leadership in Color, where we explore how Latina professionals can unlock the power of self-awareness, one color at a time. I'm your host for today. My name's Lala Bolander, and we'll be talking about navigating workplace conflict through the lens of insights, discovery, color energies. This is a tool to use to understand leadership styles that are categorized by four colors: red, like myself; yellow, like Isaías; green and blue, like Aron. Each color is associated with different strengths. Today, we will have these two great leaders with us to describe their leadership styles and share more about their strengths associated with their colors. Now, I'd like to kick it over to my guests. Will you please introduce yourselves to our listeners and describe your color of your leadership style? You can start, Aaron.
Yeah. Hey, well, there we go. Good to see you. Thanks for having me on the podcast today. I appreciate it. So I kind of fall in between the blue and the green energy within the Insights Discovery. And so if I kind of think about the green side of that, I aim to ensure everyone is heard during our discussion or when we're meeting. And then I also tend to strive to mediate conflict with empathy. And then I'm going to value the long-term relationship versus a quick win. If I think about it from the blue side of things, my team, we support health systems in a lot of their day-to-day logistics. And so we play heavily on the details. We're working through to ensure that compliance is met. We try to spot inconsistencies, and most importantly, just keeping the systems running smoothly. So spend a considerable amount of time in analyzing the details. And so that's where I probably gravitate a lot, is being very analytical.
Thanks, Aron. How about you, Isaías?
Lala, thank you for having us. Aron, such a pleasure to be here with you. Lala, I have been trying to get in your podcast for years, and I am here. I am so excited to be with the Lala Bonlander. Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to be part of this conversation. My name is Isaías, and according to Insights Discovery, I lead with sunshine yellow energy, and it'll all make sense once I explain it. That means that I bring a lot of enthusiasm, optimism, and people-centered energy to my leadership. I thrive on connection, collaboration, and inspiring momentum with the team. I'm naturally drawn to big ideas and future possibilities, and I love energizing others around me with a shared vision. At my best, I am approachable, I'm motivating, and I'm solutions-focused. But I've also learned, especially under pressure, that I have to be mindful of staying grounded and following through on details, not just the excitement. Overall, I describe my leadership style as relational, inspiring, and adaptable, with a strong focus on building trust and cultivating a positive team culture.
That's awesome. Thank you both so much for joining us today, for coming to the show. And especially Isaias, I really appreciated how you told me how you are on your best days, because a lot of what we're going to talk about today is practicing mindfulness around how we show up, depending on if we're having a good day or a bad day. So my color is red, and people see me as a bold leader, right? Red is such a strong color, it's a fiery color. And we can be seen as aggressive or demanding because we are highly dominant energies every time we enter a space. It's hard not to notice a red in a group. However, reds are also purposeful and driven, extremely determined and ambitious, which are very valuable qualities for a leader to possess. Leaders who are red, like myself, we must practice an abundance of self awareness in comparison to some other colors. Because when a red leader does not practice consistent self awareness, determination, and drive can quickly transform to being controlling or overbearing to others. So, we're going to talk a little bit today about how we communicate with our team, and especially when we're under stress, how that might change for each of our different colors. And I'm going to ask both of you to please briefly share how you might show up on a bad day or a stressful day. We'll start with you, Aaron.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a great question. And I think, this is something that you still kind of evaluate throughout your career. Like, it doesn't look always necessarily the same every time, but what I've discovered, even within my coaching session in Orlando, is that, I do spend a considerable amount of time of just looking at the details and not necessarily making the tough decisions, delaying those tough decisions, and that can come across as avoiding it and upsetting others within the team of like, hey, we need to move forward, we need to make an action plan and move forward with it. I do probably prioritize consensus a little bit more. Want to make sure there's harmony within the group before we move forward, and And then, of course, the one thing that I recognize the most, I internalize stress, internally more than expressing it. And so, it's something that I want to work on. I don't want to necessarily hold that so closely to the chest, right? So those are the big things I kind of see as blinders or eye-opening things about myself within a bad day.
Thank you. I'll pass
Yeah.
it over to you, Isaias.
Absolutely. I mean, on a bad day, for me, who is a sunshine yellow, it can represent being someone that's overly excitable, frantic. I'm easily distracted, and I'm also potentially leading to a lack of focus, and I have difficulty completing tasks, right?
Thank you for that honesty and vulnerability. I really appreciate it. One thing I'll share about Reds is that when we're having a bad or stressful moment, we may come across as intolerant or really closed off to other people's ideas because we're just trying to drive forward and get to the end result,
Right.
um, which is a really fast pace. And so, something I also want us to think about is not only do we have different styles of leadership, but we move at different speeds depending on what color we are assigned. And Reds are typically known to move very fast. Now, if I'm working on a team that is mixed and I have yellows and blues and greens, I have to be mindful that not everybody is able to move at the same speed as a red. And they need their questions answered, they need their feelings to be validated, and they need to have a clear understanding of the project before they can jump right in and meet the same speed as a red. So again, like Aaron mentioned and Isaias mentioned, there are so many different details about how we might show up on a stressful day that as leaders, we must be mindful of in order to not disappoint those around us who are relying on us to really lead the team. Now, I'd love to transition a little bit and ask about your experience of leading teams with mixed colors or mixed personality types. What are some best practices that you can share with our listeners today? Isaias?
Lala, that's a great question, and one that's incredibly relevant to any leadership role, no matter what industry, right? In my experience, leading a team with diverse personality types is both a challenge, but also a beautiful strength. It requires a very thoughtful, adaptive approach that honors individual differences, as we have seen here just in this podcast, while making sure that we're aligning everyone around the shared vision. Here's some of the things that I know that have worked for myself and for others, right? We have to make sure that we're leading with emotional intelligence. What does that mean? We have to make sure that we're taking time to understand what motivates each team member, regardless of color, right? Whether they're introverted, extroverted, detail oriented, or big picture thinkers, tailoring our communication style starts to build trust and encourages open dialogue with our team members. Another important aspect is the notion of psychological safety. We have to make sure that we're creating a space where everyone feels safe to express ideas, raise concerns, and be their true selves without fear of judgment. This is especially important for a choir team of members whose contributions are often unheard. That psychological safety is key so they can be vocal and be open about what they need and about what they're feeling. It's also important to balance structure with flexibility. Some people, like Aron, thrive on clear checklists, right? They want to process. Others want more creative freedom. I try to make sure that I'm cognizant of both and provide enough scaffolding for those who need it while giving autonomy to those who prefer to self-direct.
That's so great to hear because one thing is to practice mindfulness about yourself, but a great leader knows all about their team as well, right? The strengths and weaknesses of each of their team members so that they can delegate accordingly. That's such a great tip. Aaron, can you tell us how you might collaborate with other people that don't have the same dominant color as you?
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you, Lola. I always very similar to what you shared about being mindful of other folks' colors, right? And then what Isai said about emotional leadership. I think it's just planning or going into that discussion with them, knowing what's their why, what's their purpose, like what are they looking to get out of that. And I think at the end of the day, we all have a job, not necessarily because we want to spend such a great chunk of our day doing a job. I think we have a purpose in either something that we love to do, or we do it because the folks that we love, right? Our family, who we want to support. And I think if you're able to get to a personal level to understand like their purpose, their why, and be able to resonate to that, like that can change the discussion tremendously.
Definitely leading with humanity. And that brings us
Love
to
that.
our next section, right? When conflict hits, it's really difficult to lead with that humanity and show up as your
Yeah.
best, fullest self, even if you are the leader. And our colors really show their full range, which can transform from positive to negative when we're under pressure. As a fiery red, sometimes I have a really hard time working with people with a lot of green in their charts because of our different speeds and our different needs. The solution is for me to pause, take a minute to myself, practice mindfulness, and then think about what I can be doing to prepare. So, preparing ahead of time for me really helps me slow down and meet others at the speed that they need. And also, it helps me have enough time to collaborate effectively, especially with those green team members that have needs that are much different than my own.
I'm the complete opposite. I put, when I think about this, in the feedback I shared about just from a blue-green lens, I look at is I look at this as that I need to lead inside discomfort. Fail fast, be okay with it. Think about it as an opportunity every single time versus maybe rework or going back and having to do things or explain the approach of why I did it that way the first time. But always, take a step back and not necessarily or don't necessarily second guess what you're doing, but just be willing to just execute. Take a little bit more page out of your book and execute and be okay that it may pivot a couple of different times before we get to the end result, right?
And a great leader will also recognize that sometimes those pivots impact certain members of their teams more than others. And that
Yeah.
might require a little bit of space to acknowledge their feelings. And if you're a red leader like me, this is time that you have to schedule and make sure that you take that time to do it. Because acknowledgement really goes a long way in repairing harm or avoiding conflict altogether when you can just make space for someone to express how they're feeling, how your actions impacted them, and what the result was. So that later on, you're not having to sort through feelings of resentment or bitterness that you didn't even know existed. Um, and again, this ties back to our identities as Latino leaders because we lead with our values, right? My personal values that I live by are honor, honesty, love, and passion. And so as a leader, I want to make sure that I'm bringing those values with me into my relationships and into my team spaces. I mean, I think that's what really sets Latino leaders apart from some other leaders is that our values hold such a strong presence in our workplace.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm going to transition us over now to thinking about the context of leading our team again with various colors and understanding that us ourselves as complex human beings, we hold more than one color. So Isaias, can you tell me how you might be more mindful of what other people on your team may need?
Great question, Lala. And it's really a culmination of everything that we've talked about, right? Especially when, as you mentioned, we're leading a team made up of very different inside colors, right? Which each color represents many different things, right? For me, it's important to be mindful of what others may need. And it really starts with what I mentioned is that intentional curiosity, right? Being curious about what a blue needs, a green needs, and what a red needs, right? I try to make sure that I'm not assuming that everyone is motivated or processes information the same way that I do with my yellow energy. While I might thrive in a fast-paced, collaborative setting, a cool blue like Aron might need more time to process. And earth green like Aron as well might value a quieter, more inclusive approach, right? So just kind of being mindful of where people sit, being conscious of body language, and really trying to understand what people need at that point in time.
I couldn't agree more, Isaias. Latino leaders bring such a strong relational approach that prioritizes trust, empathy, and collective success. What may be seen to others as indirectness is often a deep respect for each other's dignity. What may be mistaken for passivity is, in fact, a commitment to unity and long term collaboration with each other. By embracing these values, our values as Latino professionals, we're not only leading more effectively, we're also redefining what leadership looks like in diverse and inclusive workplaces. I can't thank you enough for joining me today and sharing some of your insights as a sunshine yellow, a cool blue, and an earth green. The path forward is not about us conforming to dominant norms, right? It's about us leading with confidence and authenticity in who we really are. Latino leadership is not a compromise between our two cultures. It's a powerful fusion that enriches our organizations and inspires transformations on many, many levels. So remember, when you're in moments of conflict or tension or misunderstanding, pause, ask clarifying questions, acknowledge any missteps, give space to process, and always lead with your values. Next time conflict shows up in a team setting, take a breath and ask yourself, which color am I showing up as right now? How can I adjust to meet others where they're at? Thank you so much for joining us today for Cafecito con los Directores. Until next time.